Welcome to HardScript.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. She told me I had to earn intimacy. That was the phrase she used, like she was running a loyalty program and I was a customer behind on points. It hit me harder than I let on. I just nodded, wiped my hands on a towel, and went back to closing the register at the cafe. We'd built that place together, at least that's what I thought. She came up with the name, the menu aesthetics, the story for Instagram. I handled everything that wasn't glamorous: inventory, payroll, espresso machine repairs, the part where things actually worked. Her name's Claire, 34. She runs an online coaching brand for women called Choose Yourself, and she lives by it, selectively. Lately, she'd been spending more time at WeWork downtown, where her mentor held sessions for female founders. His name's Grant. Mid-40s, wedding ring, perfect teeth, the kind of guy who introduces himself like he's already in a podcast interview. The distance started subtle. First, she stopped showing up at the cafe. Then, she stopped asking how it was doing. Finally, she stopped touching me. When I asked if something was wrong, she said, "Connection requires effort, Luke. You've got to earn it." That word, earn, stuck in my head like grit under a fingernail. I didn't argue. I never do. I just watched her pack her laptop every morning, kiss the air near my cheek, and head off to strategy sessions at WeWork. Nights, I'd clean the espresso machine, drive my Toyota Highlander home in silence, and wonder when partnership turned into performance. The first real crack came on a Thursday. I went to bring her a flat white, her favorite, from Blue Bottle Coffee. Just a small gesture. When I walked into WeWork, she was sitting across from Grant, laughing at something on his iPad. They looked like a brand campaign for ambition. She saw me, her smile faltered. "Luke, this is a professional space," she said softly, like she was correcting an employee. I left the cup on her desk, said nothing, and drove back to the cafe. On the counter, I wrote 3 words on a napkin and slid it under the register. Effort deserves appreciation. That night, she texted, "We need space to grow individually." I replied, "Understood." No anger. No pleading, just that one word. She wanted me to prove my value. So I decided to show her what that looked like, just not the way she expected. The night she asked for space, I didn't argue. I just sat there, listening to the refrigerator hum and the soft tick of the clock above the counter. I'd spent 12 years learning how to stay calm under pressure. Burned orders, broken machines, landlords raising rent without warning. This wasn't different. It was just another system failure. And like always, I'd handle it quietly. The next morning, Claire left early for a full day of mentorship. She'd started calling Grant by his first name, casually, as if I should already know him. I watched her car pull out of the driveway and waited until she was gone before opening my laptop. I went through our business registration files, checking the ownership structure. She still held 20% of the cafe, but hadn't lifted a finger for months. It didn't sit right with me anymore. Not after that look she gave me at WeWork, the kind people give when they've already decided you're beneath them. I spent the day reviewing numbers, margins, old contracts. Years of quiet work had left me with something stronger than resentment: leverage. Everything tied back to the LLC I'd created before our marriage, before her branding workshops and empowerment slogans. She didn't even know that clause existed. That evening, she posted a new video on LinkedIn. The caption read, "Women shouldn't have to beg for emotional effort. Make him earn access." The video had thousands of likes by midnight. I didn't comment. I didn't even watch it. I just noted how easily she turned our private life into her content. By Friday, I'd already called the accountant. We met at a small diner near the interstate. I laid out what I wanted: quiet restructuring, no announcements, no shared documents. He nodded. "You want a clean exit," he said. "Exactly." On the drive home, I stopped by Blue Bottle Coffee again. Not for her this time, but for myself. The barista asked if I wanted my usual. I said no. I needed something new. When I got home, I found Claire's note on the counter. She'd be staying with a friend for the weekend. I folded it once and placed it in the trash. For the first time in months, the house was silent. And in that silence, I started to rebuild. Claire didn't come home that weekend. I didn't ask where she was. I just kept moving through my routines. Open the cafe at 6, grind beans, check supply lists. Regular customers noticed she wasn't around. "Your wife taking a break?" Someone asked. I said she was focused on her business. It was true, in its own way. She'd built a brand around distance, and she was scaling it fast. By Sunday night, I'd signed the first set of documents with my accountant. Her name was scheduled for removal from the business within 2 weeks. It wasn't revenge, it was realignment. She'd told me I needed to earn connection. Fine. I'd start with clarity. The following Tuesday, I stopped by the cafe before dawn. I stared at the old sign, Cafe Amber, her choice. The font was elegant, but cold. Something that photographed well, but didn't feel like home. I pulled out my phone and searched Etsy for local designers. Found one who specialized in handcrafted signage. We exchanged a few messages, and I ordered a new one. It would take a month to arrive. The design was simple, warm wood, clean lines, engraved words that meant something to me. Around noon, Claire stopped by. She wore her WeWork badge and carried the kind of expensive tote that announced success before she said a word. She glanced around the cafe like a landlord inspecting a rental. I'm meeting Grant for lunch, she said. He wants to talk about expanding your place into something scalable. My place. That was new. I told her expansion wasn't in the plan. Her smile flickered. Luke, you're too small-minded sometimes. This could be big if you just let people help. I nodded, pretending to consider it. Even as the papers removing her stake sat sealed in my desk drawer. She didn't notice. She rarely looked past her reflection anymore. That night, I updated the business account access. One signature. Quiet, legal, irreversible. Then I poured myself a small bourbon and sat by the window. Outside, the streetlight flickered over empty tables. The silence didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt earned. The day the paperwork finalized, Claire posted another video. She stood in perfect lighting, talking about emotional labor and how real women don't chase validation. It had thousands of views by the time I closed the cafe. She didn't know that, legally, she no longer owned a single piece of it. I didn't tell her. Some truths don't need announcement. They just need time. The new sign arrived a week later. The Etsy craftsman had done it by hand. Smooth cedar, brushed metal lettering. When I opened the box, the smell of wood and varnish filled the office. I ran my fingers over the carved phrase, "Good effort deserves warmth." That was the new name. I didn't need a meeting or her approval. It already felt right. The next morning, before sunrise, I took down the old sign. The bolts squealed as they came loose, like they were resisting the change. By 8 a.m., the new one was up. Customers noticed immediately. One of them smiled and said, "Feels more like you now." I just nodded. Claire called that afternoon. She said Grant had a contact at a magazine interested in featuring our cafe in a business spotlight. I told her that might not work out anymore. She paused, confused. "What do you mean?" she asked. I said the structure had shifted. There was silence on the line, then a laugh, sharp, disbelieving. "You can't just make decisions like that," she said. I told her I already had. That night, she posted a quote online. "When men feel small, they sabotage greatness." The comments praised her courage. I didn't respond. Instead, I stayed late, sanding the counter she'd always said was too rustic. I liked it that way. Real wood, not perfect. The next week, business picked up. Word spread without advertising. People came because the place felt genuine. No filters, no slogans. Claire stopped coming altogether. She had her panels and her mentor and her following. And I had my piece. Some endings don't explode. They just fade, like music turning down so slowly you almost miss the silence that replaces it. 2 months later, Claire's brand exploded. She was doing panels, workshops, interviews. Every clip looked polished, every sentence rehearsed. I saw her face on a LinkedIn ad one morning while scrolling through updates from old friends in the food industry. The caption under her photo read, "Empowerment is the new intimacy." I stared at it for a long minute, then closed the app. There was nothing left to say. By then, the cafe had taken on a rhythm of its own. The mornings were packed, the smell of roasted beans and cinnamon pulling people in off the street. Local artists hung their work on the walls, and a small write-up in the city blog called it a quiet place built with sincerity. They got that part right. Everything about the place was honest now. No staged photos, no branding sessions, just good coffee and real people. I started opening a second location on the north side. Smaller, cozier. I didn't tell anyone about it except my accountant and the contractor. Every dollar came from what I'd saved, the kind of steady reinvestment Claire used to call unambitious. Maybe it was, but it was mine. One night, she showed up at the cafe unannounced. Her hair looked perfect, her phone in her hand like a weapon. She said she'd been hearing rumors that I'd rebranded without her. I told her the rumors were true. She laughed, but it sounded forced. "You think you can just erase me?" she said. I told her there was nothing to erase. She'd already deleted herself. She stared at the new sign, then at the crowded tables behind me. Her expression shifted, just slightly, something between disbelief and envy. When she left, the barista asked if everything was okay. I said it was fine. The next morning, I came in early and checked the books again. We'd hit record sales for the week. No investors, no mentors, no validation tours. Just effort that finally meant something. She wanted me to earn closeness. I ended up earning peace. A few weeks after she showed up, Claire stopped reaching out altogether. I figured Grant had filled that space, the kind of man who talked in phrases like next quarter and scaling potential. She'd always been drawn to people who could turn ambition into a currency. I couldn't offer her that. All I ever had to give was consistency. Turns out, that wasn't marketable enough. The cafe was busier than ever. I'd added new seating by the window, and people lined up before opening. The mornings felt different now, quiet but alive. Customers didn't just order coffee. They stayed, talked, wrote. One of them, a local journalist, mentioned she was doing a feature on small businesses that survived without social media hype. She asked for an interview. I agreed, mostly out of curiosity. The article came out 2 weeks later. The headline read, "Good effort deserves warmth. The cafe that chose substance over style." The photo showed me behind the counter, pouring espresso into a ceramic cup. No filters, no poses, just truth. The piece went mildly viral in the local community. Orders doubled that weekend. That same Saturday, a DoorDash notification popped up on the shop tablet. A delivery order for a chai latte and avocado toast. Claire's usual. The delivery address wasn't hers. It was WeWork. The driver's note said, "Pickup under C. Miller." I didn't cancel it. I filled the order myself, wrote one line on the receipt, and folded it inside the bag. Effort reciprocated is intimacy earned. The next day, she posted a vague quote about realizing what you undervalued. I didn't need confirmation. She'd seen it. She knew. But that message wasn't for her. It was for me. A quiet closure, delivered through a platform she used for performance. That evening, I locked up, drove my car to the empty overlook outside town, and sat watching the lights fade behind the hills. I thought about how simple things had become since the noise stopped. The cafe, the customers, the rhythm of honest work. It all added up to something I could finally trust. Some investments pay back slowly, but they pay back in peace. The second cafe opened quietly on a rainy Thursday. No ribbon cutting, no marketing campaign. Just a handwritten sign on the door that said, "Now open." By noon, it was full. The smell of espresso drifted into the street, and the hum of low conversation filled the room. It felt like starting over, but in a way that didn't erase the past. It refined it. Everything I'd learned from the mistakes, the silence, the slow rebuild, it lived here now. I named this one Harbor and Grind. It was smaller, warmer, with darkwood counters and soft light. I wanted it to feel like shelter, not a brand. People noticed. They said it felt honest, grounded. That word kept coming up, grounded. I like that. A few weeks after opening, the journalist who'd written about the first cafe stopped by. She smiled and said, "You've built something people actually trust." She asked how it felt to succeed after everything. I told her success wasn't the word. It was more like balance. She nodded, understanding more than I expected. That night, I checked my messages. A new notification from LinkedIn. Claire had posted again, a long caption about outgrowing people who fear your evolution. The photo was of her and Grant at a conference panel. She wore the same expression she always used when she wanted validation disguised as empowerment. The comments praised her strength. I scrolled past, feeling nothing. Later, one of my baristas mentioned a new food influencer had featured "Good effort deserves warmth" on her feed. The caption read, "Finally, a place that doesn't fake connection." It made me smile. The irony wasn't lost on me. Claire spent her days selling the idea of authenticity. I'd built it, quietly, one cup at a time. As I closed up that night, Rain tapping the windows. I looked at the glowing sign outside. Two words stood out in the reflection: effort and warmth. The world would call it rebranding. I called it remembering who I was before the noise. Some people chase recognition. I'd learned to let it find me. Autumn came fast that year. The trees outside the cafe turned gold, and the mornings grew colder. Business kept growing, but the work felt different now. Calmer, steadier. I hired 2 new baristas, both college students who said they liked how the place felt human. That was the best compliment anyone could give. One evening, after closing, I sat at a corner table with the day's receipts spread out in front of me. The numbers were good, better than ever. But what caught my attention wasn't the sales. It was a message notification on my phone. "Claire," she wrote, "Grant and I are parting ways professionally. I wanted you to hear it from me." I read it twice. No apology, no emotion, just information, the kind she could later use as proof of transparency. I didn't reply. There was nothing to discuss. A few days later, she came by unannounced again. She looked different, tired, maybe even uncertain. She ordered a cappuccino and sat in the corner, away from the windows. When I brought it over, she said softly that she missed what we'd built together. I told her she didn't miss us. She missed stability. She didn't deny it. She mentioned seeing an article about harbor and grind in the local business paper. Her voice carried that mix of pride and regret. "You always were good with details," she said. I nodded. Details had kept me alive in every sense, emotionally, financially, quietly. Before leaving, she asked if we could talk sometime. I told her she already had her answers. She'd just spent too long looking for them in other people. She didn't argue. She just smiled weakly, left a tip on the table, and walked out into the fading light. That night, I sat by the window, watching her car disappear. I didn't feel anger or triumph, only closure. She'd chosen her path, and so had I. One built on image, one built on work. I locked up, turned off the lights, and stood outside a moment longer. The reflection of the new sign glowed faintly on the glass. Good effort deserves warmth. It wasn't a slogan. It was a truth she'd never understood. Winter brought the kind of quiet that settles deep. The holiday crowds came and went, and both cafes ran smoothly without me needing to hover. I'd built teams I trusted, people who cared. Most nights, I'd close the books early and drive through the empty streets, headlights cutting through the cold. The roads felt different now, wide, open, patient. One night, after closing the North Side Cafe, I got another DoorDash alert. A pickup from C. Miller. Same order as before. I made it myself again. Same care, same note inside. Good effort deserves warmth. This time, I didn't think about what it meant to her. It meant something to me. Proof that I could give without needing applause. A few weeks later, the journalist came back for a follow-up story. She said the city was calling my cafes a small business success story. "How did you turn things around after such a public split?" she asked. I told her there was no turning around. I just stopped running toward people who didn't clap unless it was for themselves. She smiled and wrote that down. When the article went live, Claire saw it. I know because she tagged me in a post that said, "Proud of anyone who turns pain into purpose." I didn't respond. The people who mattered already knew what that meant. One cold morning in January, I drove past WeWork on my way to deliver supplies. I saw Claire outside, waiting for an Uber, clutching a coffee cup that wasn't from my place. For a moment, she looked lost, like a performer who'd forgotten her lines. I didn't stop. I didn't need to. By spring, Harbor and Grind was expanding again, this time without debt, investors, or noise. I hired locally, paid fairly, and kept every space true to its purpose: quiet, warm, real. The best revenge had never been success. It was peace that couldn't be performed or posted. It was showing up every morning to something I'd built with both hands, something no one could take credit for but me. The following summer marked 1 year since everything fell apart, or maybe since it began. The cafes had grown into something steady, almost alive, and I'd started mentoring a few local business owners who were just getting their start. They reminded me of who I used to be: hungry, unsure, hopeful. One of them, a young woman opening a bakery, asked how I handled failure. I told her it isn't something you handle, it's something you redirect. Around that time, a city magazine ran a full feature on good effort deserves warmth. They called it A Story of Quiet Rebuilding. The cover photo showed the sign glowing under a soft evening sky. The article mentioned my name once, but that wasn't what mattered. It was the line that came after. A man who built something honest when honesty stopped being fashionable. That sentence hit harder than I expected. A week later, Claire came into the cafe. No cameras, no brand polish. Just her, a little quieter, a little smaller. She ordered her usual and stood waiting, eyes tracing the framed article on the wall. She said she'd seen it online. I told her it wasn't about me. It was about the work. She nodded, said she understood now. I believed her, just not in the way she wanted. Before she left, she asked if I'd ever considered consulting for other small business owners. You could teach them how to rebuild, she said. I told her that's exactly what I was already doing, just not for an audience. She smiled faintly, wished me luck, and walked out. I watched her cross the street, blending into the afternoon crowd. For the first time in years, I felt nothing but gratitude for what we'd had, for what we'd lost, and for the silence that came after. That night, I sat on the patio behind the cafe, lights strung above me, customers laughing softly inside. I looked at the sign one more time and thought about everything it took to earn that peace. She said I had to work for connection. She was right. I just chose to invest my effort where warmth was real, and this time, it finally paid back in full. Drop it in the comments. Hit subscribe. This is where we talk about what doesn't get forgiven.